Hey guys, welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm Ashers, and this is.
Pat O.
How was your weekend, Pat? What'd you do?
My weekend was okay. I've been extremely busy lately. I planted a lot of seeds, and they all blossomed at once.
Ooh, well,
So this is a good thing, but it's also a busy thing as well.
that's
Um,
overwhelming. Yeah, I mean it's good, but it's like you're like, oh shit, why'd I do this to myself? But thanks,
well,
past self.
yeah, but so yeah, I got a bunch of stuff that I want to fucking promote and pimp and talk about. Um, First of all, I watched that Glitch in the Matrix movie
Yeah, how
by
was it?
Rodney Asher, the guy that did Room 237 and The Nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all about something that I think we talked about on here. Or I don't know if did we ever do our simulate like reality as a simulation episode, or did we
I
just
don't.
kind of like
I think we just kind of
toe it?
talked about it, yeah, but never really
Yeah.
got in depth with evidence or anything.
Okay, so I mean, well, there's not really evidence. it's just
Well,
it's just kind of a theory. But what I thought was interesting, and it's actually one of the very first points that they make in the movie, and it's something that we talk about on the show all the time in relation to like the UFO phenomenon and our understanding of the possibility of extraterrestrials, is that when mankind was everything was based on water when we traveled via ships and when there was aqueducts and all this stuff, and aqueducts were kind of the apex of human technology. Mankind believed that the body was governed by humors, by liquids, by blood, by the circulatory system, right?
okay.
And then as our understanding of science evolved and we learned of electricity, then we thought that the body was kind of governed by electricity, and that's where you see things like Frankenstein emerge, right? And electricity is the spark of human life,
Sure. Yeah.
and that whole concept, right? And then science progressed, and then we had computers, and you hear people saying things like, oh, the brain is like one big computer, and that's how everything is run. Is our brain is a computer and it operates our body, right? But now we're at the point where the apex of technology is artificial intelligence and alternate reality and virtual reality and stuff like that.
Right.
So now you see the emergence of this theory that we are living in some kind of simulated reality.
Right.
And that's probably not really the answer as to what's actually going on here.
Yeah.
That's just where we're at right now with our technology. So, we acknowledge that this is a theory. We acknowledge that this is the prevailing theory, but we also acknowledge that it's probably an incomplete theory based on incomplete science that we have access to at this time. And that is like something they say within the first 10 minutes of the movie. So immediately it kind of hooked me on that regard alone, because you're pretty much making the statement like, look, we don't know what the fuck we're talking about here.
Right.
We're not claiming that, we're not making like a definitive claim as to the nature of anything. This is just where we're at in history.
Yeah.
And since this is where we're at in history, we'll try to explain this very timeless fundamental question as to what the fuck is really going on here. And we're just going to use it based on the language that we have right now. So I thought that was brilliant. And the movie kind of only gets better from there. So I highly recommend the documentary. And it really made me want to go back. They show, because it's very, the movie is intercut with excerpts of a speech that Philip K. Dick gave. So they show a lot of clips from Philip K. Dick movies, which are like, on one end you have like Total Recall, and on the other end you have like Scanner Darkly, right? And have you seen Scanner Darkly?
I have not.
So that is, you ever see Waking Life?
No.
Oh my god! So both of these movies are like rotoscoped, Richard Linklater, kind of quasi animated movies.
Okay.
Waking Life is really interesting because it's basically like 2 hours long, and it's 2 hours of the kid from Dazed and Confused, Willie Wiggins, just having conversations with different people, different philosophers, and they took these interviews that they filmed on film, and then they had artists kind of animate over the film like cells,
Okay.
like draw over it.
Yeah.
And it's like rotoscoping technology.
Yeah.
And Charles Schwab did a bunch of commercials with them It's the only other example that comes to my mind. So Richard Linklater did Waking Life kind of as a just like a prototype with the technology, and it was one of those things where like, oh Jesus, like every college philosophy class probably had to watch it. I like Richard Linklater because I like his other movies. He also did like Slacker, Dazed and Confused, School of Rock, A Boy's Life. He's done like a ton of other stuff too. But this was like his kind of weird experimental philosophical movie. And then once he finished with that, he went and did A Scanner Darkly, which has Keanu Reeves, Winona Ryder, Woody Harrelson, and Robert Downey Jr. And it's an adaptation of a Philip K. Dick book. And once again, they use the rotoscoping technology, and it deals with a lot of heady stuff. You should get high and watch The Scanner Darkly sometime. You'll probably enjoy yourself. Same thing with Glitch in the Matrix, though. I actually watched it with my 10-year-old son, and him and I were both fucking fascinated by it and loved it.
I thought you were going to say you were both really high.
I don't know what he had been doing, but
I was like, damn, Pat, you start him early.
It's none of my business. No.
He's practically an adult. He's fine.
It's at this point, I'm staving off chaos as far as that's concerned. I'm delaying the inevitable as long as I possibly can.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, I was looking it up. It's brand new. It just came out in 2020. So
yeah, it came out Friday. Yeah.
Oh, Friday.
Yeah. Oh, and it's only a $7.99 rental, which is nice. It's not the fucking crazy $20 thing that they try to hit you with.
Yeah. I didn't realize. Well, I'm definitely going to check it out. It looks interesting.
Oh yeah, it's good. It's right at home. If you're a fan, if you're listening to this show, chances are you'll dig it. It plays like one of our better episodes. That's actually kind of like researched and coherently thought out before we start talking. But no, it's tits, man. It's really good. I can't recommend it enough. And like I said, also if you haven't seen Scanner Darkly or A Waking Life, check those out too. Because those are pretty good.
I still have to watch the Room 237 one. I think I would like. I find it at least entertaining, even if I don't, jump all over.
Yeah, the Kubrick documentary. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that would be pretty neat.
And then another thing that I wanted to talk about, just because I meant to last week, but I couldn't because Tony was here, and we just kind of got into that stuff right away.
Yeah.
But I had been talking on this show throughout the month of October and November last year that I had been working on National Novel Writing Month, and I had been doing a series of short stories that were all kind of based around sex and music. Well, I started publishing those on my Medium, and I published the first 3. And I'm going to do probably one more this week. And then that's like the first 4. I did 20 altogether. And some of them I definitely need to kind of like rewrite and work on. But some of them are pretty much ready to go. 3 of them are already out there. So,
yeah. I read 2 of them. I know you sent me 2.
Oh, which 2 did you read?
I don't remember, but I know you only sent me 2. I read everything you send me. So, and so whatever 2 you've sent me, Pat, I've read them.
Those were okay. The third one is the one that's set in the future with Aerosmith. That's pretty good. But I got a 4th one that's coming out this week, and then I got to take a break for a little bit because I'm working on some other stuff. And
yeah,
but those are going to start to see the light of day, and they're really good, and I'm very proud of them, even though it's weird. It's weird. I think I stopped sending. Yeah, because the first couple, like I was sending around to people, like, oh, check this out. Like, look at what I did.
Yeah.
Go read this. And then one of my friends who I'm, pretty close with was like, this is weird. And I'm like, okay, I got to remember, like, this is still dirty stuff. So I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable.
Well,
so I stopped.
It's not everybody's bag, but if you're into the erotic, fiction, then check it out for sure. We'll put it. You send me a master link, and I'll put it in this description.
Yeah. All right. That sounds good. And then also one more thing I'm going to pimp real quick, just because it's going to hopefully become something of note later on this year. But I published it was probably like 2 years ago. I published a Amazon ebook that you can read on your Kindle or just whatever you read ebooks on.
Sure.
Called 4 Short Films by Pat O'Sullivan. And it was a collection of 4 scripts that I had written that I thought were excellent, but were really some of the high watermark of my writing. But unfortunately, they were just like completely unfilmable. You know what I mean? Like it would cost the same amount to film one of these scripts that it would to shoot like a 90-minute independent movie.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
You know, and that's a problem that I've had going back to ever since because I grew up liking movies like The Rock or Die Hard, you know what I mean? Or Indiana Jones. And, you know, when you first start writing, it's like you want to try to write something that you and your friends can then go and do. And if you deal with these bigger ideas, you just can't do that.
Yeah, they cost a lot of money.
Right. So
if you had a lot of money.
Sometimes like I can write these like small little ideas where people just kind of talk and there's only 3 characters and
sure.
And you know the monster only shows up in the last 2 pages. But then sometimes they're just kind of bigger concepts and you write them and you realize, well, this will never get made.
Right.
But you know, I still think there's value in the stories themselves. So a couple of years ago, I compiled them all together and then published them on Amazon. And that book's available. And I think it's only 99 cents. I mean, it's not like terrible. I'm not trying to pay my fucking mortgage with it. But check it out because I think one of them, something might happen with one of them in the future, hopefully. So
read it teaser, now.
Huh?
Get a little tease in there. Get a little tickle to the.
I learned it from the best, right? Isn't tease and denial? Isn't that the subtitle of this show?
Is it?
I mean,
that's me being in denial. I don't know.
Yeah. Speaking of which, how was your weekend, Ashley?
Oh, it was okay.
See, what'd I tell you?
No, it was good. I mean, I didn't do anything too wild and crazy. I mean, you know, believe it or not, I hung out with somebody Saturday night, and you know, here we go. So, you know, I hang out with this person, and you know, he's definitely a fringe thinker, and that's great, you know, except most of the fucking shit he says is wrong. He's wrong. And it really got me because in the middle of like having conversations about, you know, very interesting stuff, you know, he's like, one thing that gets me is when people don't take the time to do their research and, you know, really know about things and, you know, before they open their mouth and form an opinion on them. And I'm like, oh yeah, I completely understand. Right. Then he goes on to explain to me how even N95 masks don't work to stop the virus. And I'm like, guy, like, yeah. So what you're saying is that realistically you hate yourself. I don't understand. And you know,
well, what was he drawing this from?
Because he vapes, and so he can vape through his mask. So because he can vape through his mask, it doesn't stop anything at all coming in and out. And that's just not how any of this works. And so, you know, that's just not, it just doesn't work. So, or whatever, you know, at that point, I didn't really care to listen to anything he had to say. But, you know, then he started talking about other things, and it's just, you know, again, it's stuff that's like, you know, it's like common knowledge, but it's not, but it's wrong. And nobody really ever took the time to like look it up or whatever. I guess like, I don't know, Marilyn Manson had his ribs removed to suck his own dick, right? Everybody says that, right? But like nobody ever actually like knows if that's true or not, but nobody ever like stops to look it up except for like people like me. And I'm like, oh,
It's not though. Is it right?
It's not right. It says that never happened. It's just like an urban legend.
That's what he had Evan Rachel Wood chained up in the crawl space for.
Right, exactly.
Or Corey Feldman, which is the latest one. Did you hear that?
No, I didn't hear that.
Oh Jesus, he's getting in on this shit now too.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm not touching that. I'm not touching that.
All right.
I'm just gonna say, fuck people that abuse people. It's my fault. I brought him up, but fuck people that abuse people in any way. Period. But anyway, the point of it was that, you know, it's shit that's not real, shit that you can easily prove and disprove, that you could look up, and he's, you know, spewing the obvious fake, and it's like, okay, all right, well, okay, so you know that really just kind of turns me off. I mean, it really does. I'm not into that. Like it's fucking. You have the entire world in your pocket at all times. You can find the answer to anything you want to find out.
And he's spending it. He's like trapped in the month of August on Instagram.
Yep.
He's not using it to research topics of the day or read the medical science data on fucking N95 masks.
You say this is my
He's
fault,
just
Pat? No, just
going through the month of August on Instagram like there ain't without a care in the fucking world. This guy.
If you guys don't know about Instagram in August, you should check that out sometime.
You should.
Yeah, so the guy's dumb. He's just dumb. So I mean, while at first I was excited because it's always fun to find someone that's at least, on the same page as I am. Most of the time I find people exactly like him who want to sound smart, who want to know it all, and who want to blow your mind, but all they're doing is blowing smoke up your asshole. So
right.
But at the bare minimum, he was good for at least blowing smoke up my asshole. So
Thank you for answering that question before I had to ask it.
I got mine out of it, and now I will never see him again. So anyway, and then I had some Super Bowl festivities. Nothing crazy. I did not watch the game at all. I did not have to because I was busy drinking and hanging out with people.
Good for you.
And so, yeah, I mean, we hung out. It was good. It was good times. And then, that was, I don't care who won. I don't know anything about it. I just know that I got drunk and ate some food. So, that was my weekend.
Yeah. We watched the Puppy Bowl mostly.
I watched the Puppy Bowl. Yeah.
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 And I'm trying to finish, I'm reading the Stephen King book, 11/22/63.
Oh, okay.
Just like 900 fucking pages long. And it's like, I've literally had this book for like 3 years and I picked it up and put it down and I can't bring myself to finish it. And I'm just trying to get it over with so I can move on to.
Yeah. Sometimes that's really hard. I had that issue with American Psycho. No, American Psycho is a fucking amazing book. However, there will be like an entire fucking chapter talking about business suits and what everybody's wearing. And it's boring.
I have not read American Psycho. I have read literally every other single Bret Easton Ellis book.
Wow.
And for some reason, I haven't read American Psycho. I don't know why.
Read it.
I will. I mean, it's on my list of. Up next, I got a VC Andrews book. I don't know if you're familiar with her at all.
My mom's read hers. Yeah, wasn't she the Flowers in the Attic lady?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need something salacious. But
yeah, read just some American Psycho. No, it's good, but the problem is that if you don't sit there and actually read through every single bit of all these things that you don't give a fuck about, that only Patrick Bateman gives a fuck about, you will miss something imperative. So like, because I've tried, I can be a skimmer. I'm like, okay, we're getting into one of those chapters about fucking some band, and he's going on and on and on and on and on. And then like all of a sudden, like my eye skips a beat, and he's talking about conducting experiments on these women's dead bodies, and it's like, wait, what? Hold on, what did I miss?
I think that's honestly why I haven't read it yet, is because he's got another book. I think it's called Glamorama, which is about fashion models. And it's one of those same things where like the narrator is unreliable and lies and says things and contradicts himself. So it's already confusing already. And once again, if I skim read too sometimes, and that's what Stephen King is great for, because he's not fucking laying down. He's not dropping science here. It's pretty easy to fucking follow.
Right.
So, yeah, and Bret Easton Ellis, he requires your undivided attention.
He does, yeah.
And sometimes I just don't have undivided attention. I only have divided attention.
Well, I mean, I'm having ADHD. It's fucking hard to sit there, and that's why I don't read a lot of fiction, because it's not that it's not good. It's not that I'm stupid. It's just that I don't find it engaging enough to keep my attention. So when I read something that's nonfiction, these are real life things that actually have something to them. Whereas like my life is not going to change if I read the fictional book or I don't, it's just, I just don't have the same kind of relationship. But, I've read some, and I've read American Psycho, and I thought it was really good. It's worth the read, but it's hard to read, not because of how it is very graphic, but not because of that, but because it can be boring as fuck. So
I am so jealous of your Super Bowl Sunday. I need to get drunk so fucking bad. I
Just
need
get drunk.
to.
You're an adult. You can go buy alcohol anytime you want and drink it.
No, it's not that. I need to go to like a party. I don't.
I
It's
know what
not.
you
It's
mean.
not the alcohol as much as it's like the socialization.
Yeah, it's
You know.
important to me to have to be socialized, and we do it as safe as we possibly can in today's times, and that's hard. That's a hard aspect. We have to exclude people a lot, and it's not because we want to. It's just because nobody wants to get the COVID.
Well, everything here is open again. So here's the situation I'm in. I in towards the end of March, I am getting together. I have like a guys' weekend, and we're going to Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and we're
Okay.
basically just going to play like Dungeons and Dragons for 4 days. And we all agreed that before we go, since it's gonna be 10 of us in a house together for 4 days, um, that we are not the like 2 weeks leading up to that, we're not going to take unnecessary risks. We're not going to go out drinking. We're not going to do nothing.
Yeah. Right.
So that means that I have until like basically St. Patrick's Day to no, and actually St. Patrick's Day is the week before. So I got the weekend before St. Patrick's Day um, to go out and do stuff. And February is already kind of shot because I don't want to I don't want to be a 40-year-old man talking to you about the weather. But I don't know how it is in Ohio right now, but in Chicago, it's fucking terrible.
Yeah,
It's
same.
like, and we're going to be below zero below freezing at least.
Until April.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for at least the next 2 weeks. At dinner tonight, my son was like, "Do you know that today it was colder in Alaska than it is in Chicago, or it's colder in Chicago than it is in Alaska?" And I'm like, "Dude, when you get to be my age, like they bust that out like at least once a year, like it's some big fucking surprise." I'm like, "We
Right.
just need to acknowledge at this point that Chicago is fucking colder than Alaska." You know what I mean? Because they always like to like pull that out. Like, so today in Alaska, the high was 20. Today in Chicago, the high was 7 degrees.
Right.
All right. Well, it's like that every fucking winter here. So,
All right,
yeah.
get over it. And then they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, but I thought global warming was real." They always say that, and it's like, just stop. That's embarrassing.
Right. No, don't you remember in like November when it was 85? It is real. Trust me.
Right. Yeah, I was there for that. Yeah,
But
we have that. I mean, it's February is usually January and February, they're like the hardest months because it's usually so shitty outside. Like you just don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to go anywhere.
right, like either it's a snowstorm and you don't want to drive in it, or it's fucking freezing out, and like everyone's just there's no sunlight, and everyone's inside, and everyone's going fucking crazy.
Right.
So I think I can probably handle like another week or two of this, and I got plenty to keep me busy at home anyway. But once that stuff over, like in March hits, man, I need to party like a
Well, right, you
motherfucker.
got something to look forward to. I mean, I think that's why I do it. I have to have things like set dates in my mind to look forward to. Otherwise, I'm not going to make it
Right.
to the next day. And so, that's
Yeah.
just how I've always been wired. And so, for me, I'm constantly trying to make some type of plan. I happen to be lucky, and I'm friends with a bunch of misfits who are like contractors, so they don't work around people, or some people get tested all the time at their job, or whatever. So I mean, we just we do it as safe as we can, and continue to get together at least every other weekend. And I think it's really important to it's important to do what you're supposed to do, and not throw like these huge massive parties, but I think it's still important to have some type of social life as much as you can.
Right.
So we try, and that's what we did yesterday, so it was good. But speaking of Wisconsin, speaking of
Girls
Wisconsin,
up there be wilding.
yes, that's good. I can't even. Yeah, they do. I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about tonight's topic. As much as it's kind of frustrating. I guess really we'll start from the beginning, and we'll kind of work our way through the time of it all. So
Sure.
in 2009, there was a website called Something Awful, which was basically like a message board. I don't know if you guys remember those, but it's not been that long, right? You could post all kinds of shit, funny stuff, memes, scary stuff, whatever you wanted to post. People talked about it. Anyway, so they ran this photo contest, and a guy by the name of Eric Knudsen, Knudsen, it's whatever you say his name. He submitted two photographs, and he submitted a description, like a story, to go along with these photographs for this Photoshop contest. And I don't know if he won. I don't remember. But people saw these photos. I'm gonna tell you, he did a damn good job on these pictures that he submitted. They look very legit. But in the photos, like, one of them is a black and white photo of kids on a playground. And in the background of the playground, you can see kids. These kids are playing, but in the background, there's like this very tall figure, very slender figure, wearing a business suit of sorts. And
So male, perhaps a slender male figure.
yes, a very slender male. We'll call him Slender Man. How about
Okay.
So that's essentially how Slender Man was born. This guy submitted two photoshopped images. They look great. He added a story with it, and Slender Man just fucking ravaged the internet. And this was this was kind of the birth of creepypasta in a way. I mean, you kind of had creepypasta before that. We talked a little bit about creepypasta in last week's episode. But yeah, I mean, it's basically just internet fiction that, could be real, it could not be real, except they always have an author. And in this case, that's Eric Knudsen. And so, but people really like Slender Man. And a lot of people insisted that it was a real thing. So, then people just ran with it. They kept adding to the lore. They had video games were coming out about it. There was like a short mini series on YouTube that I think ended up getting made into like a movie or something, called Marble Hornets, and it got made into something big. And then there was a movie that came out, but something else happened.
Right.
So, and 2014, I believe. I'm pretty sure it was 2014. Maybe it was before that. Two 12-year-old girls had a sleepover with their other 12-year-old girlfriend, but they had a plan during the sleepover. And the plan was to kill their friend. And the reason why they say that they had to do this was because they wanted to become proxies to the Slender Man. This was what they said anyway. They said that if they killed these girls, then they could go live in Slender Man's mansion, which I guess he has now, and live with him, and their families would be safe from this creature. And then this sparked a whole controversy of just kids using the internet and violent influences and blah 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 blah. We'll get I'm going to get more into detail about things. So, and then. We're kind of where we're at today, where Slender Man is still, he's still a big icon, that's for sure. But I think it made a lot of people step back from it a little bit. So,
right.
Starting back from the beginning, what do you think of the Slender Man story in general, Pat? Did you look at the photos and stuff?
Yeah. Well, so I was in my 30s when this popped, and
Right.
I was already kind of a little bit too old for it. And I was vaguely aware that what was going on, like all adults are, about what happens in the realm of geekdom or whatever.
Sure.
So this was kind of like on the outskirts of my radar, and it probably wasn't until the case in Wisconsin that I really stopped and was like, wait, now what? And like really dug in and paid attention to any of this.
Okay.
And because I was like, well, I know it's not real, but do people think it was real? Now, my kids, they were watching YouTube videos about it. And this kind of, it's interesting that we do this week's episode after last week's, not just because of the creepypastas connection, but because of the amount of time we spent talking about Five Nights at Freddy, because I make a connection between the two in my head, kind of.
Yes.
Because once again, they were like, it just seemed like there was this phase that my kids went through where they were watching Five Nights at Freddy videos, or they were watching Slender Man videos.
Yeah, the Slender Man game, was really kind of got more kids interested in the lore, I think.
But the game is once again is very like very little gameplay. I think you're walking around with a
Yeah.
flashlight,
Right.
and that's it. And then you just shine it, and it's there, and there's a scream. It's a jump scare. That's all it is.
Right.
So, like, to me as an adult and somebody that grew up with horror and grew up with paranormal stuff and all of this stuff seemed kind of mundane to me.
Yeah.
Like, okay, it was a photoshopped image and that was cool, but I've seen fakes before. I've watched fake
Right.
alien videos on fucking Larry King. Like, what's
Right.
this? This is a fucking bad Photoshop job, you know? And it didn't really kind of captivate me. I was definitely too old to kind of like, ooh, but I wasn't thinking as a kid, and seeing the way that my kids, it kind of grabbed them a little bit, and the way that it's like, is it real, is it not real, kind of reminded me of the Blair Witch Project when it first came out. When
Yeah.
Blair Witch came out, I was 19, I was 18, I was 19. I knew damn well that was a movie,
Right.
but I was still young enough and probably high enough and whatever to be like, well, maybe it isn't, or I don't know, because the way they packaged it was so slick.
It was. Yeah.
And
So they did a very good job. I mean, I think we've talked about it before.
yeah, and I felt like that's kind of the Slenderman had like elements of that, where it was kind of slick and is it real, is it not real, and it's definitively not real. No one
Right.
claimed it was real. It was part of a fucking Photoshop contest.
Right.
It's not real. It's not real. So we know that now. It's established. However, just by virtue of the fact that it kind of came up through the internet the way it did, and it was kind of geared towards younger kids, that's kind of how the phenomenon started to pick up steam. And then, of course, when the stabbings happened, I was all like, what the fuck is this? And saw the documentary and that whole thing.
Yeah,
So
right. And it kind of, and then, it kind of just it picked up from there. I mean, it is a really interesting, the first time I came across a creepypasta, I thought it was real and I was an adult. It was the Binge Round. And it sounds like you're not too familiar with creepypasta. But
I knew a kid in school that wrote a lot of them.
oh,
He would submit his writings for him, because don't they have like short story contests and stuff like that, right?
kind of. I mean, creepypasta is a little different. And I think creepypasta is a very new concept. So I don't know if you could have known someone that was writing for that specifically.
No. I went back to school in my 30s. So like,
I'm thinking like grade school, teenager.
No, I'm talking about like 8 years ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, there's
where it was like
on it. Like there's a whole website on
right, and you would kind of write these short little stories about like a monster or something, and you would try to pass it off like it was true, and you would post it,
right,
and people would vote on whether or not it was believable or something, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, basically, yeah. And so I fell into it because I learned about this binge round situation, and it was about it's about the Legend of Zelda, and this guy allegedly buys a copy of Majora's Mask for the Nintendo 64. And and he takes it home and he starts playing it, and weird fucking shit happens. Weird, creepy, crazy ass shit. And then it just gets wild from there. But it wasn't just like he typed this up. He had videos of the gameplay and things like that. And I was like, and me at the time, I was really big, which I'm a big retro game collector, and I was really big into it at that time. And
Majora's Mask?
Not Majora's Mask, but retro video games.
Okay.
Majora's Mask it's okay.
Right. We could do a show on that sometime if you want.
I'm gonna get crucified for that, for saying that. But anyway, so to me, this is like my ultimate, like, one of my nightmares is that I'm going to go to a garage sale, I'm going to pick up this video game, and it's going to be like haunted or something,
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely played on a little bit of, my fears, which then I found out, reading into it a little bit more, I found out it wasn't real. I'm like, cool. And then, I've read other ones that, touch a little bit. There's another one's called Booth World Industries, and it has like a phone number and everything with it. I mean, the lore of it takes it kind of far, and so these things can definitely blur the line between fantasy and reality, but you can tell because again, these things have an author. They they know. People know there's a way to trace it back to something, and it can be dangerous. However, blurring that line between fantasy and reality is okay for normal people with a normal functioning brain. It's not
Right.
okay for somebody that is plagued with, say, schizophrenia, who
Right.
already has trouble knowing where that line is in everyday life. And, so that's kind of how we get to these 12-year-old girls. Before I mention that, though, I do want to mention My daughter, she's not, everybody thinks that I'm like the cool mom and stuff, but like my kid's not really into like, Bigfoot and aliens and stuff like that. She's not like me. I mean, she is, but she isn't. But we'll talk about some things sometimes. And when I first started the podcast, she asked me to do an episode specifically on something called Siren Head. And I was like, okay. I'm like, what's Siren Head? Do you know what Siren Head is, Pat?
Yeah. Oh my God. I had a similar experience with my son.
Okay.
And I almost want to bring him in here, make him tell the Siren Head story. Yeah, I convinced him that me and my best friend, his godfather, found that in the woods when we were Cub Scouts and fought it.
A Siren Head?
Yes, that we're the ones that killed it, and that's why people know about it, is because of us.
That's what I should tell my kid. Fuck, that's a good idea.
I use him as like he's too old for it now, and he's done enough Second City to know when I'm fucking with him. But like, I used to use him as like my improv like practice partner, where he would say stuff and I would just like go off on these things, and he'd be like, "Wow, really?" And I'm like, "No, I'm fucking with you, dude." But yeah,
no, I do that shit to my kid all the time just because I'm an asshole.
I basically recounted. I gave him the ending of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, but instead of the basilisk, it was fucking, and like Lee got stabbed, and I had to pull the fucking sword out and shit, and like
the Siren Head thing.
Yeah, with Siren Head, it came out of a pit in the ground.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so the Siren Head's obviously like fake. Like nothing biologically can exist except fucking speakers on its face. Like that doesn't even, it's obviously not real. So, but my daughter insisted, and she'll tell me like all these weird stories and stuff all the time because she has access to YouTube, and YouTube's a weird place. And so she's insisting. She's like, no, this is real. This is real. This is real. There's videos of it. I've seen it. I'm like, okay. So I sit down and she finds the video where it's like, top 10 Siren Head sightings or some stupid shit. And I watch it, and I can definitely see where a child, obviously my kid believed that it was real because she could see it with her own eyes, but it's obviously not. It's CGI and shit. It's good CGI, but it's fake. And so, I can definitely see a kid getting into something like that when it's so easy to make a good fake nowadays. And, so what are they supposed to believe? They're kids. They lack critical thinking. They're not able to have the wherewithal to go and do the research on it and, figure it out. They're not supposed to. We need to teach them how to do those things. We haven't done that yet. And, so it was kind of scary. I was like, oh, well, shit, maybe that's how the Slender Man thing happened then. So going back to the Slender Man and back to these girls again. These girls are 12 years old. Do you remember when you were 12 years old?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember, how awkward and weird and how you didn't know shit about shit at 12 years old? What was 12-year-old Pat like?
Oh my God, you do not want to know.
We were probably a hellion, I'll believe that much.
We will talk about this off air.
Oh, okay. All right.
I had discovered
I
figured something out. And it changed everything.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but no. I mean, like, what was I doing when I was 12? Honestly, we were, we'd hang out behind this bowling alley, and we'd gather up garbage, and we'd build little garbage piles and then start them on fire on the train tracks and watch the trains hit them. I probably started smoking fireworks. If any of us got fireworks, we'd be blowing off fireworks. We'd like find beer bottles and like throw them against brick walls just to listen to them smash. Like, we weren't like delinquents, like we didn't rob people, but we just kind of like wandered around and committed minor acts of vandalism and
Now, would you say that any of those things were good decisions?
Oh my God, no.
Okay.
No. I mean, I went
But do you fault your 12-year-old self for doing those things?
No, because you got a whole lot of hormones. You have very little supervision. You know how to lie, and you're in this terribly awkward in-between age where you're not a kid anymore, but you're by no means an adult, and you just want to be fucking 17 so goddamn bad.
I
but
mean,
you're
that's
not, you're
about the time
12.
where you start getting your own freedom and things. You know what I mean? You're allowed to, go outside by yourself or stay at home by yourself a little bit, or do those things. And so, you're given a lot of responsibility, but you still have yet to learn how to use that responsibility. It's a very weird. I hate that fucking age. I really do. I don't like. I don't like fucking. I don't like kids between like the age of like 9 and 15.
What? How old's your daughter?
She's 9.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird because my daughter's 9 and my son's 10, and they're basically at the same
Right.
point in development, even though she's a year younger. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, I don't think it's a fun age just because a lot of those kids, they have no clue what the fuck is going on or how anything works or, anything, but they are intelligent enough to have a personality. So it's weird.
Ugh, I know.
Right. It sucks.
And yeah.
But they're not able to use any type of judgment to form that personality yet. So it's like, they're just, but it's not their fault. I mean, I'm not saying that, they're pieces of shit. We should, kill them all. But, it's not their fault. It's just it's just a part of the process. They'll never get there if they don't go through this horrible, because everybody says that. Everybody, usually the most awkward stage of your life is between that age, right? I mean,
Yeah, after 18 to 20 wasn't a picnic for me either. I feel like that was a second puberty where you're trying to figure out how to be an adult and you're not underneath the I mean, you busted out of high school early, but like, if for those of us that kind of stuck with the ride, it ends abruptly, and there's not a whole lot of instruction as to what you should do next unless you jump fully into the whole college experience, because then it's like you're on those like railroad tracks for a little bit to carry you for the next 4 years. But yeah, it's a terribly awkward, weird age, and I can't express the hormones too. Oh my God.
Right. On top of that, your whole body is changing.
You're feeling things. And I mean, in relation to this the documentary in this case in Wisconsin, I didn't even think about it, but like, excuse me, I usually mute myself when I burp, but I didn't there. But I mean, how much of this do you think it was these two? I mean, think about it. It's two girls trying to win the favor of an older man who they're going to go live with. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that there was definitively some kind of like sexual attraction to Slender Man, but it's some kind of weird shit going on there. And, like you kind of alluded to earlier, one of the girls, although reading it now, they were both found incompetent to stand trial, but like, one of them was clearly schizophrenic. One of them was really fucking nuts.
Well, her father's schizophrenic.
Yeah. That one, it was very clear that she was not in control of her faculties. She didn't know what was going on.
Right. Well, and on top of that, I mean, I'm not gonna name them. It's not hard to find. If you want to find out who these children are, you can. I'm not into exploiting mentally ill people. But we obviously have to talk about it. If you look at them, which you can find pictures of them, I mean, they look awkward, right? I mean, they look like, the weird kids at school, right? So they probably had a weird social life. They were probably some type of outcast. And I'm not saying that people that are weird, outcast, and with mental illness end up, killing their friends, because that's obviously not the case, or the whole world would be dead. But, but they definitely had a lot of issues. So the Slender Man thing and like the world of creepy, because it wasn't just Slender Man. They were really into the creepypasta thing. And, but they found a place where they kind of belonged. But their mental illness, again, didn't let them recognize where that line was. And so they brought this fake world into their reality.
Well, it's like QAnon for toddlers. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it is.
It's escapism. It's fantasy. It makes real life more interesting. It adds another layer of texture to their miserable, mundane little existences.
Sure.
And it gives them secret knowledge of secret things.
Yeah.
And everybody loves that. Everyone likes to think that they're special, that they're more intelligent than everyone else, that they know what's really going on. And,
right.
They go to school and there's all these pretty girls talking about the Kardashians or whatever on MTV, and they get to take solace in being outcasts because they know the names of all the devils that live in the closet or whatever.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
So
Right. Right. And then, so it's like, it was just this situation in general was a perfect storm. It was the perfect, ingredients to create something like this. You had these socially awkward kids who are, just naturally socially awkward anyway, because they're at that weird fucking time in their life with all these weird hormones. And they happen to get into this, niche group of things, of fringe ideas. And then they also happen to have mental illness.
yeah.
So, it seems more like the one girl was following the other girl
Mm-hmm.
more so than them kind of agreeing to it together, which usually happens with pairs is that you've got one that's the leader and one that just kind of hangs around because they don't have anything else. And, so this kind of happened. And then, but it sparked this whole outrage of like, should kids be allowed access to these things? This is obviously Slender Man made them kill. And it's like, no, not Slender Man didn't make them kill. Just, it just happened.
I,
And they didn't kill her
I,
anyway. She survived 19
right.
stab wounds, and she survived. So they're not even good at killing.
Well, I mean, those bitches didn't have no heat behind them. I mean, they didn't. It's not like they shot her. They fucking. She was out of the hospital 5 days later. I mean, not to be a dick about it. I mean, it was traumatic. If it was
And
my
she's
daughter, I'd
like,
be.
she's moved on completely. She's just like,
Yeah,
and she
yeah. It
says if
was.
she could talk to them today, she would thank them because it's molded her life to what it is now. And it's
Oh,
like,
I'm sure she's a. Yeah, she can get into whatever college she wants.
right.
Uh, there's all those fundraisers and shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't. Here's the thing. As far as and I mean, you can. You could say this about music. You could say this about movies, and
Movies, video
unfortunately,
games
they
is a
said it
big
about
one.
D&D before, and we
Yeah.
know how I feel about that. But here's the thing: do these things? These people have issues. These things become avatars for people's pain and craziness, right?
Right.
And the thing is that if they weren't there, those people, the troubled people, would find other avatars for their dysfunction to manifest,
Yes.
right? Because,
Right.
like I said, with QAnon, Slender Man, whatever, but I maybe not. I don't know. Maybe they would have. Maybe because I don't think Slender Man is the problem and all these things being a problem. I think the fact that all these things exist and the parents are oblivious to them is the problem. Because there was probably warning signs with the Slender Man thing where the parents saw their kids obsessing over some shit and didn't take the 5 minutes to stop and say, "Oh, what's this? Oh, what are you guys reading?" Or, "Oh, what are you guys watching?" Or something
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
And if it was, that's kind of the problem, is that parents tend to write things off like, "Oh, my son." What in that Glitch in the Matrix movie, there is an extended interview with a guy that thought the Matrix was real and killed his parents,
Right.
and he goes through a step by step. Now, this was a very disturbed young man who was all about the Matrix and the Marine Corps and Disturbed and all this kind of fucking that whole scene back in the 90s and shit and trench coats and stuff.
Yeah.
And he goes through like how he would watch the Matrix 3-4 times a day and how he was convinced it was real. And before he killed his parents, he walked into the other room and he picked up the phone and he gave the same speech word for word that Neo gives at the end of the movie when he picks up the phone and he talks to the Matrix about, "I'm not here to tell you how this is going to end. I'm here to tell you how this is going to begin. I'm going to show these people something that whatever." And would this guy have done that without the Matrix? If the Matrix didn't exist, would this guy have killed his parents?
Right.
The thing is, maybe not. Now, that's not to say he wouldn't have been a disturbed individual. And that's not to say that he would have acted out in some other way. However, would that particular night have gone down in his house the way it did had the Matrix not existed?
Sure.
Right?
Or even
It
had he
wouldn't
seen
have.
it at the time in his life that he did. I mean, it's
Right. And he was also obsessed with the Marine Corps, so there was always the possibility that he would have joined the military and been a state sanctioned murderer like everyone else.
right.
So
Yeah.
who knows? But the thing is like I don't think that it's weird because I think just to say like, "Oh, you can't hold these things," I don't think we can blame these. I think I don't think we should dismiss any of this. I think we should really look at it and say, why were these kids drawn to this? Was there something, what was it about this story that they connected with? And why didn't they connect with this other girl instead?
Right.
Why did they have a stronger allegiance towards Slender Man than their classmate?
Yeah, true.
Why, you know what I mean? Like, let's not just say, oh, Slender Man has nothing to do with this, let's throw it away. No, 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 no. I feel like that's irresponsible too. But at the same time, I don't think taking Slender Man out of the equation fixes everything.
I don't think there's any preset way to determine when you create something that it's going to cause somebody, because, this dude, Eric Knudsen, did not sit down that day and go, I'm going to make this, and I hope that one day 2 12-year-old girls try to stab their friend to death. That doesn't happen. The intention is not to make it for a bad, nefarious reason. And there's no screening process to know if that's what's going to happen from something like this. But you're right. I mean, I know my kid, and I know what kinds of things that, I allow her to take in, and what kinds of things I don't, because I know her very well, and I know her maturity, and we talk about fucking everything, so I would hope that I could be that person, but I don't want to say that these were bad parents either. However, the girl's dad's got schizophrenia, right? That's genetic, and they knew he had schizophrenia. That's genetic. It's a possibility. So why would you then let your kid be exposed to things that, like I said, it's not just that it's a scary story, it's that it is purposefully made to seem real. And that's the point of it. You wouldn't then take that kid and have them watch the Blair Witch Project, because there's a possibility that it could fuck with their head if they don't know the difference between fantasy and reality.
Right. Well, there's a stigma. That's one of the things that I really took away from that documentary, was how damaging the stigma of mental illness is.
Yes.
And that's a perfect example of it, because they didn't want to admit, they were very hush hush about the father's issues,
Right.
and they were very oblivious to their daughter, manifesting the same ones. And
Right.
everything was, they didn't want to talk about it. It was, well, look at how much egg do you have on your face now?
Oh.
You know what I mean? You didn't want to maybe admit that your daughter needed to be medicated. Well, now you don't get to make that choice anymore, because she's in the
Right.
fucking
Yeah.
booby hatch for the next 40 years of her life.
Right. It's true though. I mean, yeah. And it still is very much, I mean, we need more and more, we need so much more work in our mental health care system. And, we need to get over these old ideas of, it's bad and it's wrong and it's horrible. And it's like, not really that horrible, as long as we treat it and maintain the people that have these things. And
especially with the level of just the way things are changing so quickly with social media and the information that these kids are being exposed to through YouTube and tablets, and how much they're bombarded with information that they can't really process. Like, yeah, we should really be investing more in this now than ever. It was something we always should have been putting money and time and attention and empathy into.
right.
Now looking at the challenges that our kids face and how they have a much more complex world than we ever did. If we don't want 2 generations from now, if we don't want, a generation of sociopaths coming up behind us,
Right.
like, we really need to start investing in mental health infrastructure now to deal with this shit, because
Right.
we don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
But looking at the Slender Man thing in general, I feel like that's something that like happens every generation or so.
Well, right, because we didn't have, there was like some report of a lady in Cleveland who claims that her daughter was also into Slender Man and attacked her with a knife or something. And it's like, but other than that, I mean, it's not like there was a big, all these kids killing each other over Slender Man. I mean, that's
Right.
why the case got so big, was because it's a one-off, weird, strange, situation. So
you probably had a bunch of, in 99, there was probably a disproportionate number of people that committed suicide or school shootings that had Matrix posters in their bedrooms. Right. And
Sure.
then there was the D&D shit in the 80s, where that guy went crazy in the tunnels underneath this fucking school. Stuff like this happens, and all it takes is 1 or 2 cases where someone, Judas Priest got sued because I think someone committed suicide because they said that Judas Priest, some woman sued Judas Priest because she said that their music was the reason that her son committed suicide. Like, think about what a hands-off parenting gesture that is to the very fucking end. Like, you can't even,
Yeah.
you can't even take responsibility for your kid's decision to take his own life.
Well, right.
You're
Suicide isn't
still,
something that just happens. It takes a long time
yeah,
to get to that point.
you're still trying to blame someone else and say that it's fucking
Right.
Judas Priest's responsibility to raise your kid the right way, and it's Geffen Records' fault for releasing this album in the first place. Like, fuck you. You know what I mean? Like, you're the epitome of bad parenting at that point.
Right.
But that exists, I think, throughout culture of parents not understanding what their kids are into, and their kids act out in whatever different ways, and they try to blame the art, not the child.
Right.
I didn't have that kind of parent growing up. My mom, a tree would have fallen in the woods. My mom would have thought it was my fucking fault. I got blamed for everything.
Yep, same. I still do. Fuck.
Yeah, that's why whenever you see these people on the news and it's like these people are in denial about what assholes their kids were, I'm like, I became an asshole to fulfill my mom's prophecy.
Yeah.
She just assumed that I was. She
Yeah.
thought I was up to no good before I even knew what no good was.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Accountability is a big thing. I will preach accountability until the day that I die, and not just us holding. I mean, we need to hold ourselves accountable, but when we don't hold ourselves accountable, we need a community of people to look at us and say, "You need to take responsibility for yourself." And
Right.
it's so just like the Marilyn Manson thing. It's like, you know what? You got all these people coming out blaming the motherfucker for all this horrible shit. Yeah, he did it. He's guilty. Sorry. And if you're gonna like really sit back and be like, a lot of people are like, oh, it's just a kink gone wrong. No, it's a little more than that. And by you apologizing on his behalf and letting him continue to do that shit, you're just a part of the fucking problem going forward with the rest of the world. And it's like, that's not okay. So, yeah, I mean, you need to hold yourself responsible. And if you see somebody that for some reason, and maybe it's because maybe they can't hold themselves responsible because they're mentally ill. And if that's the case, somebody needs to fucking step up and go, look, we need to figure out a way to make this possible and make it work. And maybe that person's your child. And maybe, you as the parent need to step in and be like, oh, well, my child can't hold themselves accountable because they are too mentally ill to do that. I need to get them the help that they need in order to make them know what self-responsibility is. Because there is help out there. You can live a normal life. You can be mentally ill and still function and be a productive, member of society and still be a person. You're still an individual. You're just part of your individualism is that you have a mental, I've got, I don't know, tons of mental illness. I'm a fucking walking fucking DSM. I got it all. I took responsibility for that, and it took a really long time. It was hard. It was extra hard for me to take responsibility of it because my mental illness told me not to take responsibility for it because it wasn't my fault. But eventually I did. And I mean, I'm not saying that my story is going to be the same as everybody else's, but it's possible. It's possible for you to do and for you to do with your kids. But I mean, either way, we can't go back to, I think it was 2012. I can't remember exactly. No, I think it was 2014. We can't go back to the day that it happened. We can't go back to a year before these girls decided to do this and go, look, we need to get more mental health resources. All we can do is continue to go forward. And going forward, we need to do better. And, that's another thing. We need to stop being like, it's a couple of years. The story was hot a couple of years ago. And obviously it's been a couple of years since it's happened and it's been a hot thing. But we can't just leave it in the past and be like, oh, it happened. Let's just forget about it and move on, because we didn't learn anything from it yet. Nothing happened. Nothing changed. We still lack in mental health resources. We're still not holding people accountable to what they need to be held accountable for. I mean, maybe the lives change of just those people, but we ran it through the media like a circus and then didn't do anything about it. And that's irresponsible. And so here we are talking about it on this podcast that reaches some of you. So maybe you'll do something about it. I don't know. But I try. I'm a victim's advocate for my county. I probably shouldn't say that, but I'm going to. And so I directly try to have an influence on these people's lives. There are small things that you can do every day as a person to make the world just a little bit better. And, we definitely need to focus on that a bit more. Um, but as far as like it being the Slender Man's fault, I mean, it's kind of dark to think that like this thing that wasn't real, we ended up manifesting in the form of two 12-year-old girls, right? I mean, he kills children for one. That's like the legend. And they tried. They weren't successful, but they definitely tried, and kind of ran with it. So but I don't fault anybody for still wanting to have Slender Man be relevant. I know when the movie came out, they were bitching about how like the families did not want the Sony movie, because there's been a couple movies, but they didn't want the Sony movie to come out. They said that it was wrong, that they were profiting off of this tragic event or whatever. And were they? I don't know. Fucking probably. It's Hollywood. They're sleazy. Sure, they probably were. But the movie came out and it bombed and it was not good, and nobody tried to
Right.
kill anybody because of it. So
What I thought was interesting was there hasn't really been for as much hype as this thing generated on the internet.
yeah,
There really wasn't a like good video game, right? There was a couple mobile games, but that's it. And the mobile games, like we talked about, were just kind of basic, and it was just like
were they only
cash.
mobile games? I thought they started off as like actual video games and then moved to mobile platforms.
No,
PC games.
maybe.
They were PC games, and then that's how like
Yeah,
Five
but
Nights at Freddy's started. It was a PC game.
But they were like free to play, indie developed, first person survival horror games. They were just you walk. It's just a mouse. It's nothing that crazy. But there was no like place like big like multi-platform like Resident Evil type game, right? Because the thing is kind of flimsy. There's not a whole lot to it. It kind of only works in this one dimensional little flash in the pan thing, and that's why the movies, I knew that there was like a couple like actual movies coming out, but none of them seemed worth my time or worth checking out, and they, like you said, they bombed and nothing really came of them. It was kind of like it was this thing that kind of, if the internet didn't kind of self-perpetuate it and just like balloon it up, it was kind of dead on arrival anyway. It was never going to be the next Freddy. It was never going to be the next Jason. It wasn't going to be anything long-standing or something that was going to be remembered 5, even 10 years ago, 10 years from now, if these girls hadn't done what they did. And the unfortunate part is it still might not even really be that remembered.
That's true. That's a good point.
Because this is a horrible case and we're kind of a little bit closer to it. So we're still talking about it. But flash forward 5 years, is anyone going to give a shit? Probably not, because there'll be something even more horrific that fucking happened.
Yeah.
But this was kind of just, I don't know. Kind of just like a dumb fucking internet thing.
Well, and that's the thing with the internet, is that the internet
just got caught. Yeah, I'm sorry. It burned really hot.
Yeah.
for an instant.
Yeah.
And then that was it, and then it was gone, and now it's just kind of gone.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That's what the internet does with things. It doesn't really, I mean, I guess there are things that are classic and timeless about the internet, but it's more like you'll see it again. It's never like it makes its rounds again. You see it again and you're like, oh, that's I remember that. Just like being rickrolled, that was such a big thing. And
look at the GameStop stuff.
Right. Yeah, it's done in less than
that was the news story for 2 weeks, and those Reddit people will do whatever, and now fucking it's all over and it'll never happen again.
Right. Nobody gives a shit about it. Right. And so it's just a very, the internet has definitely created a very, its own kind of monster with, we need constant stimulation. We can't just sit on one thing for a while. We get bored, and we need something new. And there will always be something new because it's the internet and literally everybody is on it. We have access to all that information of new things. So, I mean, that's just how things will be. I don't know. I mean, I think Slender Man will still, I think he's made his mark. I think he made his mark before the killings happened, or, the attempted murder. But that's maybe just because I was already kind of in that circuit of interest of those topics. So I knew what it was. And, was in the know. So I can't look at it from an outside perspective of somebody that's never really heard of it before, so
Yeah.
it's just an interesting thing. But creepypasta in general, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. Now they've turned into like they call them ARGs, which are it's augmented reality games. So they're more like interactive stories that people tell on the internet. Somebody's just sent me like a Twitter profile, and it's just kind of a creepy story but told in the form of social media. And again, it's interactive and it's immersive, and it's fun. But at the same time, one day it'll end, or whoever's running the account will just not post to it one day, and everybody will forget about it. And it'll be over. But that's basically, I mean, that's creepypasta. And those things, I think that the general idea of them will continue, but as far as like these main characters, probably not. No, probably not. But what's always cool? What's going to stand the test of time, don't you?
What?
Mothman. I mean, he's been going strong since the 1960s, so.
Sure. Now, do you think that's because of what's interesting? I mean, think about that for a second. Is it because there's so much more content to keep the legend afloat? Is it because it's better branding, better character design, or is it because Mothman was born from a time where legends existed and where legends were legends, and we live in a time now where no new legends are being created because everything is so temporary?
Well, that's a really good question. I think that there are new legends being created, but I think it's a interesting. It's just a weird. It kind of has the help of everything. So the Mothman, when you talk about his popularity and stuff, the only people that knew who the Mothman were in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s were people that remember the reports in Ohio and in West Virginia from that time. Or specifically the people of Point Pleasant. I mean, they knew because they had majority of the sightings. They remember all of it, but it didn't really get popular until that horrible movie came out, and and then everybody got interested because they had never heard of the Mothman. So the movie, The Mothman Prophecies, they go and look up the Mothman Prophecies. You go and look for other media on it. Maybe you really like the movie and you want to learn more about just the movie, and you run into John Keel's book, which is not fiction. It's a collection of these things happening in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And so it gained some popularity there. And then a couple years later, they ended up having the Mothman Festival, which then, grew bigger. And now he's just kind of become the popular like cryptid mascot. Somebody was kind of talking about it the other day, and they were asking, eventually the Mothman mania it's gonna fizz out like everything does. People are gonna know who he is, but he's not gonna be, number one. Who's gonna be the next cryptid that people are gonna go crazy over? And I can already see it happening. It's the Dog Man. You can't turn a corner anymore without hearing about a fucking Dog Man. And it's like, so he's definitely gonna be the next lovable weirdo.
Yeah, I think the next, if another cryptid is going to kind of take off and wedge itself into pop culture consciousness, it's got to be intelligible. I don't think we want, bestial figures anymore that don't speak English and kind of run wild in the woods. I think that's not what's going to kind of capture the zeitgeist of American pop culture consciousness. We need something that's going to talk to us. We need something that's going to tell us what the fuck's going on. We want answers. And, a half man, half dog that runs around eating its own shit is not going to impress people, even if it was real. You know what I mean?
It's been a surge in Dog Man sightings. And usually when you see a surge in sightings, it's because people are learning about it and they're making up stories.
But Mothman seems to, and it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that because I actually just texted my friend Annie right now. Annie was a friend of mine, and she was a hairdresser, and we used to hang out and we used to party together a fucking lot. And I remember she had like UFO tattoos and stuff, and this was probably, I don't know, 2005-ish, and being like, oh, like you're really into that? And she's like, oh my God, like I love the X-Files growing up. She's in all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, like, what's your favorite thing? And she goes, I think it was the Mothman. And
Okay.
me being like, really? I'm like, that Richard Gere movie? She's like, yeah, but there's a book that you have to read
Yeah.
the movie was based on. And I was like, huh. And she was into that. I just shot her a text right now because I want to be like, how the fuck did you hear about that before? You know what I mean? But I think that was kind of always around. It was, if anything, it was always, the Mothman was always a popular story in the cryptid community. The cryptid community just wasn't as big as it is now. Because before internet, there was no way for all these different weirdos all over the world to get together. And now, because of the internet, you guys can all sit around and fucking talk on each other's streams on a Friday night. Before, everyone was scattered to the four winds, just kind of listening to coast or participating in these internet message board things, which were even in their infancy back then. Um, but no, I'd say part of the Mothman's like appeal is that one of the things about his story is that supposedly he pops up before disaster strike, so at least he's got some kind of precognition or sixth sense, or he knows when something's going to happen before we do. So there's a higher intelligence than our own there. And
Maybe.
I would argue that that's the reason why kind of it sparks a greater interest in some people. I mean, look at what they're trying to do with Bigfoot now. They're trying to make Bigfoot these super intelligent alien beings, because the idea of them being big dumb forest apes is just kind of like, no one, that doesn't do anything for anybody, you know?
I think it depends on what is sexy and what's not. Like the dog band's never been a popular thing. Now it's becoming popular. More people are talking about it. So I think that soon he's going to be kind of the mascot. In the 90s, it was aliens. Everybody was all about
Right.
aliens, and different. And in the 80s, it was Satanist, and it's. But even though these are all the same thing, I mean, these kind of fringe ideas, they always have a mascot. Currently, it's the Mothman, and you got people now, across the pond recognizing what the Moth. Not everybody knows, but some people do. They're like, oh, I know about the Mothman, and they shouldn't, It's just a very Midwestern thing. But
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just an interesting. It's interesting to watch what people pick up and what they put down. At the end of the day, I have no idea. I don't have a way of knowing what's going to be the next big thing. If I did, I would market off of it, and I would definitely use that to my advantage. But
Get tattooed on your ass.
But here I am. I don't know. Maybe I'll be the next big cryptid mascot. It's going to be me. So that's
That would be something, wouldn't it?
I'll take it. I mean, I am starting a cult. So if you would like to join, send me $50 and you can you can join the cult. I'll send you an official badge. I'll make it out of construction paper and crayons just for you.
You heard it here first, kids.
But I don't know, the Slender Man, I think it'll continue to be a thing. He's definitely not as relevant as he used to be, but I think that, he's not done yet. They will milk it for every little bit of slender juice that they can. So that's, I guess that's my final thoughts on it. Pat, you got anything else to add there?
I got nothing.
All right, guys. Well, in that case, I guess we'll see you next Wednesday.